we're opened up the line and we're giving everybody the permission to talk. Can you hear us?
Yes.
Great. Let's give it 1 or 2 more minutes because there were originally about 18 people who wanted to be in on this. It always is a bit it's always a bit complicated to see whether everybody can get in. So let's give it 1 or 2 minutes so everybody can join, and then we'll open up the floor to at least do as good as possible a small bit of a check-in so everybody can bring their voices into the virtual room, and then we'll take away the agenda. And I'll begin by just speaking the agenda. You've received it. We're opening. Sander will give a bit of a business update. And we said we had a couple of topics. Some people sent in some feedback. So a couple of you wanted to hear more about portal credits. And then there's open space to talk about other things. And then if you wanted, I will talk about some experiences I've had with creating programs inside large organizations and deploying structural dynamics at a large scale. We will also, for the benefit of other participants or late joiners and people who want to do this offline at a later stage, record this session. So just that you're aware, and we'll post it as soon as it's being processed. So you can actually dip back into it. I'm also not going to punish you for being on time.
No.
So we're at 9 and 3 and 9 and 3 minutes. So I'd like to give Etta the opportunity first to bring her voice into the room and just say how you're doing and whether there's anything you want to add to the agenda.
Hi, thank you. Hi, Sander. Sander and I've already spoken.
Yeah, thank you for your kind email. I'm together with Martijn traveling. We're in Germany right now, so I wasn't able to respond properly, so I didn't. But I just yesterday night read your lovely email, and thanks for the good conversation.
Yes, and thank you for your patience. So no, I'm good. Whatever you're doing is good for me.
Great. Jane, welcome to the webinar. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. Thanks. Looking forward to it.
Great. Good to hear your voice.
Also, I think I know Etta from a couple of the trainings, so it's nice to hear her.
Nice.
Hi, Jane. Imagine that.
Hi, Etta. Good to hear you.
So I will keep you unmute unless there's a lot of background noise coming from your microphone. Whenever I unmute you, I will mute you again just for the benefit that everybody can listen in properly.
But then if there is something you want to say, just raise your hand, which you can do virtually by just clicking on the raise your hand thing here.
Got it.
Hola, Marcelo. Bienvenido. Welcome.
Thank you. How are you?
I'm all right. So good to hear your voice.
Thank you, Marvin. It's a pleasure.
Hi, Marcelo. We've never met, but hello.
Marcelo.
Hello, Sander. Nice to meet you.
But Marcelo is based in Buenos Aires. He keeps the torch of structural dynamics burning in South America.
That's the purpose. definitely.
Great, good to hear. Moving over to Piotr. Hi, Piotr.
Hi, how are you? Good to talk to you. I had a little discussion with Martin, which I would like to continue because my major problem is actually how to sell the program. And we have, and so I welcome, and you offered some tips very much, not as insider, but as an outside consultant, how can this be promoted and sold? And I also know Edda, we also went to the training once upon a time in Boston. So.
Oh my God.
Hi, Edda.
Hi.
Everybody knows Edda.
Well, also there aren't too many of us around, so it's kind of an easy name. Nice to see you too.
Yeah.
Or hear you.
And now giving the floor to Samantha. Welcome, Samantha. Nice to meet you virtually, because I don't think we've spoken with each other yet.
Yes, hi. Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to the call.
Great. And then switch to Diane. Diane, thank you for joining the call. You joined a little later. We just invited people to just quickly bring their voice into the room and mention whether there's perhaps anything you want to add to the agenda or want to say to the group.
So apparently something is not working with your connection, so we'll go over to the...
Yeah. Oh, she doesn't have. You don't have a microphone. Okay,
perfect.
Good. Then you're listening. However, if you have a text, Diane, that you want to type, then just type it to us, and then we'll answer questions in that way. Okay?
Perfect.
Floor is yours.
So cool. Thank you all for joining. Last time I gave a really big tour around the new platform. It's available to everybody right now. We've already done a lot with your feedback, which will be implemented in the current release, which will be released in the next couple of weeks. So there's a lot of little things that were unclear, especially we had some feedback around finalizing projects, setting them up, and a couple have already been taken into account, and a couple of things will be taken into account. And so there's been a lot of work done to clarify email delivery, which is a completely new feature. What you might know is that sometimes emails end up in spam filters and or bounce back because there's an error in the email address. And that's one of the things that we've just added to the newer version of the portal. Also a feature that we've added is that you can delete projects and delete participants. That was already there, but now it's better implemented, and the delete a project is also very handy. And we're working on a thing that could be very interesting for large-scale implementations, which is sort of what does the company look like, or what does a bigger implementation look like at the client system, which I will show on the page, because that makes it easy to sort of implement multiple teams at once, because that's a feature that we've been wanting. And something is bouncing, reverberating. So that's what we've been doing. Especially, there's been a lot of feedback on the report by Etta, so thank you for that. And we're looking into adapting and changing the report and improving the report. And I cannot stress enough that we haven't changed anything to any algorithms. All data, all algorithms, all scoring, questions, language is the same. But it is a thing that we will be working on the presentation, and even to get it more interactive and get group reports more interactive in that sense. So there's a lot of small updates on the way. I think it's shortly, and there's somebody making a lot of background noise, which I will check. I will just mute for certainty's sake. So. So that's what we've been working on. Yeah, so there's a lot of things that happened. So that's the portal. Are there any questions about the beta portal now that you've been using it, or questions on how to use it or other observations that you want to share, please raise your hand if you want to add something to it or have a question about it. No? Jane Wheeler, it's really more functional and the look is much more contemporary and appealing. Thank you very much. We hope so. Today we were at a client in Germany, and we had some extensive feedback on the way the portal looks, and also with Edda. So we still think that there's a higher bar, but there's and especially the speed and the architecture is improved. So that's what I'm mostly proud of. But thanks, Jane, for your feedback. And we'll be moving to the new portal in the not too distant future, permanently, but just for function's sake, the old portal will exist, but then we will primarily use the new portal. And if that's the feedback on the portal, there's also other news. Together with Center for Systemic Change, Kieran in Australia. There's a big conference coming up. We'll be emailing you about that. It's the 10th and 11th of September in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and already committed to talking there will be Amy Edmondson, that will combine her insights on psychological safety with David Kantor's work on
team dynamics.
Team dynamics. It's late. We've had a whole day of delivery, and there will be sessions by a keynote by Bill Isaacs, and a lot of time to sort of reinitiate the global community and the global initiatives that are there around the topic of structural dynamics, and just a really good get together. So that will be the 10th and 11th of September, and we'll be in contact with you about opportunities there, which is something that we're really, really excited about, because it's about time that we get some more attention to structural dynamics, and it's great that Amy is feeling strongly about it and so is so supportive.
Yes. Good. Then I guess now it's open floor. After we talk about portal credits, because there was one of you who raised the topic of how do portal credits work, I think, is the person who actually raised that question in the current conversation, or is that not the case?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. Then I guess my question is, based on your recent experiences in recent months, are there any things that or topics that we need to address here? Do you have any questions around whatever is happening, or how we could better support you? It's really, in as far as we're concerned, an open floor. So feel free to bring up any topics.
I have a question. This is Jane.
Hi, Jane.
Hi, Jane.
Hi. I'm often asked, do you have any handouts, or do you have, or is there anything from the Kantor Institute that takeaways, basically, other than the report, which really does summarize pretty well, but it would be nice to just have something that's more concise, even just pulling the same things into a simple 1 or 2 page handout or such. Are you thinking of having those sort of resources, or is it acceptable to cut and paste from the baseline report in order to do that, to meet that request?
So that's a good and an interesting question. What I would have on offer is I wrote a book in 2013, and it has many chapters, but there is one chapter which I often use as a handout about dialogue, and there's a chapter about team dynamics in which I describe in my language how structural dynamics on the 4 layers of people's personality works. And I'm more than happy to put them in the domain basis of a Creative Commons license. And if you respect that type of copyright and you just give reference to who wrote that, then that's, I think, at least the feedback I got from very seasoned practitioners is that it was a very good summary of how the structural dynamics works. So I'm happy to put that out there.
Okay, great. I would love that. If I can just credit you at the bottom or some such, or it's easy to copyright things or whatever, but it would be helpful. Could I see it and then possibly discuss with you how?
Absolutely. I greatly respect you as a writer and as an editor. So I'm already prepared to receive feedback from you.
Great. Maybe we could work together for something that that would be that would pull out from, that would be standalone.
Yeah, so if there's another initiative that I would like to introduce here is that we set up a joint share for some documents with this group to start with, because we're here now.
Yeah.
Which could be like a shared Google Drive where we can just share documents and share material that we think comes in handy. And actually, you get me thinking, Jane, because in the construct as it was, we were only allowed to do things with the instrument. As we look at it right now, there's more freedom for us to develop the community. That's why we do these calls. And I think it's about time that we do some marketing activity and some marketing material as well. We're a bit stretched these weeks, but I think that it's reasonable to expect over the coming couple of 4 to 6 weeks, we can come up with a couple of sort of why should you do structural dynamics for team effectiveness? Why should you do structural dynamics for coaching? I think that would be really, really helpful. And it's something that you can expect from us to start delivering because the current Kantor Institute website is not well maintained. And I think it's about time that we get some ideas about that as well.
Totally agree. And I would love to help with that if that works out. And also I think that should be coordinated with Kieran and the center, because it would really serve both purposes.
So Kieran and well, of course we've had dinner but we've had extensive conversation, and the idea around the center is that the center will eventually take over the marketing activities of the Kantor Institute. So we're looking at co-branding and co-working with Kieran on that as well. But in just the void that there is right now, I think it's better to also have a plan B and just have material already, which is not a plan B, which is you need to have something right now. That's to be expected of us. So that's completely correct.
Makes sense.
Hi, this is Etta. I have a slight technical problem. Can I share my desktop for a sec? Or is that not possible on this particular Zoom?
I don't think that's...
Yeah, there's you could go down, go share, and then go to share.
It's not on my window. I use Zoom all the time, but the way Zoom is set up,
I think it's best if you explain maybe, or we can take it offline and add it later. That would be great, because what's the technical issue about?
That's fine. I can just explain it. So while we were on the call, I was thinking, well, let me just log on to the portal. So I have an old link that worked. So it's now coming up. So I clicked my old link. I have 2 issues. I clicked the new link that came in the email that you sent. And I was just curious to see what happened when I clicked the old link that had worked for years. And it now says my connection is not private, and it won't come up with the HTTPS. it kind of disappears.
That's strange because I just opened kantorinstruments.com, the old one, and it's on kantorinstruments.com.
All right.
So maybe that old link is not functioning, but the kantorinstruments.com is.
Let me try that. Yeah. Kantorinstruments.com. Okay, let's try it. That one's fine. So the old one, I think, is just Kantor. It was the KIP.Kantor Institute. So I just
No, that's nothing. That's gone.
That's antiquated. Yeah.
That's
that
not.
explains why it's not coming up. All right, then we're good. Thank you.
Great.
That was easy. Oh, actually, wait a second. There's one other thing. So I get in when I clicked on that. So that was great. But hold on. When I look at the URL after Kantor Instruments.com, in gray, it's / unauthorized = true. I don't remember seeing that before.
And that's not a problem. That's just that's a security loop that we created in. So that's, if you have any more in-depth questions, I will.
Okay, I'll take them offline.
Yeah.
Great.
But I see that Diane had the same problem. So apparently something has changed with the old link that had worked and rerouted. That's now changed. So that's I don't know why that is, but that's something that's actually from the Kantor Institute. So I will investigate that, why the old link didn't work anymore.
Right, because even just a few months ago it was working. So that's fine. I deleted it and put the new one in. Okay, thanks.
Okay, cool. Are there any other things that this group would benefit from that we discussed in, let's say, the plenary? Do you have any other questions or thoughts or observations or needs?
Can I pose one more?
Yeah.
Yes.
Too much airtime. Sorry, guys. I have a burning interest in the high stakes instrument. I feel like that is there any plan for that, or is that sort of in the holding pen for now while everything else gets launched and perfected?
I think the problem with the high stakes instrument is that it would require, both in terms of editing and making it, quite a lot of funding. And unfortunately, due to the current state of the Kantor Institute, with which we had the agreement that we would somehow sort out funding, there isn't any funding right now. And what we've been doing, just to be super transparent about it, is we have invested, and that's not backed up by revenues. We have invested over $100,000 out of pocket cash so far already to make this work and to sustain the community, and we've done that with love, and it's because
we'll continue doing that with love. So there's no anxiety here.
No, so we'll continue to do that, but until we have brought this to the next level, or we come up with a way to fund it in an alternative way, there's just simply not the budget, because we're already pretty much way out on a limb in terms of the out-of-pocket cash investments that we make and we will continue to make. So I'm as passionate and as adamant as you are that there should be a high-stakes instrument, but we unfortunately are bogged down by the fact that we just simply haven't got the investable capital at the moment with what we're already putting in on a monthly basis for it to be prudent to invest it.
And just to get away from just the investment bit, there was a high stakes instrument made by David, which was supposed to be good. We implemented that high stakes instrument, and it's just not market ready. So the language, the model, it's trying to overdo a lot of things.
Yeah.
You've been a witness of that in the beta testing. There's one thing though that we're trying to do in this scope, and that's we're going to look at how do we add context to the model, which means that we're looking at a subset of questions in the baseline that we can apply context to without changing the construct of the test, and so also the statistical validation. And in that sense, what I mean is that we can ask, in what context are you answering this question? So your behavior in the context of the board, or is this the behavior in the context of you under pressure? And that would be first open into the context of high stakes, but also how do you show up in different meetings or different settings, with different groups, not meetings, but different groups, which is an easier to do experiment. And I would love to involve you in that experiment, Jane, because I think you give good feedback.
Yeah.
This is Etta. Sandra, you told me about that the other day. That's an amazing idea. I think it's going to be so revealing for people. So is this available yet, or is it still?
So the concept of context is available at the Fearless Organization Scan. They both use the same new backend technology, and so we can make that concept really easily available within the construct of
the baseline.
The baseline. However, not all questions in the baseline are fit to use context. So we need to go through it with a comb and just look at what are we going to do. So that's where there's the hesitance that we can not just add it, but it's something that's easier to add and expected over the coming months. And I want to be involved in that. And I want you to be involved as a community to test these new products. And there's all sorts of ideas that we have about sort of using the material that's there. That's actually the bottom line is there's more. The baseline is such a big instrument that there might be things that we can get out that are more applicable, smaller, and more pointed towards the topic of either high stakes or contextualized behavior.
Yeah. And then also to say a few more words to thinking about a structural solution. We are in wide-ranging conversations with all the stakeholders in this whole constellation about how we can create a foundation that actually brings in a co-creative way the whole of the community of practice. And we are working really hard to grow revenues from instruments and training. And once we've recouped some of our investment, we are more than happy to allocate a percentage of revenues to that foundation. And that I see that I'm also speaking to your question, Diane, because Diane asked, are there any plans to create a learning community to provide deeper knowledge on an ongoing basis? This is very much part of the conversations that we are now hosting amongst a couple of some of the most active contributors and most senior practitioners and some of larger partner organizations throughout the world. So probably in the next webinar, we'll be able to give a more detailed update about it. But I think what we're all trying to do is to work towards the conference in September, where we also have the space then to meet each other live and see how we take this forward. So the way we view 2020 is that we're doing another major investment in, on our part, cash, but hopefully as a community in time to see how we can actually ramp the whole body of work up to the next level. But in essence, the move we're making is we're saying there is a certain legacy body of work, and now how can we create a process where we can foster learning, but also start building together and start integrating our practices with each other. And I think that's the exciting opportunity that's there. And we all would want to have it rather tomorrow rather than down the road towards the end of 2020, with what I've seen with how we've built the community of practice around the Fearless Organization and Amy Edmondson's body of work, is that we're actually in a space where we now have a group of partner organizations set up across the globe in the space of 9 months. So if we can manage to find the right lever points, I do think that as a community we can be quite surprised and enthusiastic about what we will have achieved in terms of progress and also in terms of integration and much more co-creation rather than work coming from a single source. And I think that's really an exciting development. So I want us to figure out a way to make this much more co-creative over the next 9 to 12 months. And I would be surprised if we haven't made major strides at the point where we hopefully all meet each other at the conference in September and also towards the end of this year.
And just to speak to the non-exclusivity part, if you want to be part of product development, I suggest that we set up a little a mailing list group where all people that want to be involved in product development or in beta testing get on the beta list or something.
Yeah.
And I see that you want to be part of this too. So anybody that wants to be part of this, drop us an email or just chat in this conversation, and we'll see that we set up a sort of beta test group where actually everybody that attends these sessions sort of automatically is more involved in and is always getting access to things earlier. And Diane too. Thank you.
And Jane.
And Jane.
Yeah.
The dates of the conference it will be 10th and 11th September in Cambridge, Massachusetts. I don't know the venue from
It's
the
the
top of my
Harvard.
head.
I think it's the Harvard University Club.
Yes.
So it's quite a nice venue as well, central Cambridge.
And we'll make sure that when we've sort of aligned with Kieran, that we, who's really driving this, that we give you some communication, formal communications on this somewhere next week.
Yeah. Because we're working with Kieran and also with Helen to get it synchronized and that we can send out some unified communication.
Perfect.
Any other business for this part of the webinar? Okay.
Cool.
Then I promised I would share a couple of, if you will, war stories. I'm mindful that some of you need to charge into your day or are already midway in your day, and we are at the end. But I'm not going to share any slides. I'm just going to explain what I've done on a couple of occasions. I met David for the first time in 1999, and then I did an extensive bit of work with him around 2001, and we've been in touch ever since. And so it's been part of my practice, and we've had ongoing dialogues in the last, I guess that's 20 years or so, about the body of work that he's created. And I've never been critical about the body of work and and what he's created, but I think I have sometimes taken a different approach because in the language, David is of course a random meaning person, which means that there's always another piece that can be added on and another piece that can be added on. And as an example, the last piece of work that he did on the high stakes instrument, when we debriefed it and looked at it with a couple of senior practitioners, the conclusion was, oh wow, it's so rich, but it's also actually 4.5 instruments packed into one instrument. And I think what I'm good at and what I've always been looking for is practical applicability. So how do you operationalize this without over-engineering it? And that has brought me to a place where I've created a couple of, you could almost say, Lego building bricks out of his work that I've come to describe as human process technology. And when I say technology, I mean that it's something that actually produces replicable results. So there are forms of working with it that you can put in the design of a large-scale change program. Actually teach people to bring and teach to other people, and it actually cascade into organizations on the basis of a train-the-trainer principle with good coaching, intervision, and supervision in the background from people who are actually senior certified practitioners. And my ambition is to share that knowledge openly, and I'll do it in a more structured way in one of the next webinars. But what I am pretty proud of still is that over the course of the last 10 years, I've actually succeeded at getting electrical engineers at a vocational level, so people who install meters in your house for a energy company, I've been able to teach them how to at least explain the dialogue model and explain the action layer of the model. And by the mere fact that they were teaching that to their colleagues, the quality of the interaction and the team dynamics at the work floor started improving. And this is a program that the energy company bought, and we rolled it out by making use of internally trained change agents, co-designing the program with them. And we brought that to the company over the space of 3.5 to 4 months during the low intensity summer period. And people went on a physical journey, and ultimately 6,500 people in the whole company got an experience of that work. So they got to understand what the dialogue model was in conjunction with the action layer of the structural dynamics work of David. And they got to wrap their heads around building a new culture with each other. And we've replicated that for a large international insurance firm for a population of 4,500 people. And ultimately we ended up doing it for a large European energy company where it's been delivered at scale for 23,000 people across 11 geographies. That's large scale change. And another one that I would love to spend time sharing and exploring also how you might have deployed it in another webinar is in the context of taking a group or a bundle of teams in an organization and work on a specific challenge, such as how can you unlock more innovation. And this also had those building blocks in it. And I have managed to also sell and deliver that with some colleagues to 10 or 20 or 30 teams in an organization. And that creates sort of a ramp to bring it into in an organization in the context of work.
What's really interesting is, because we work together with a lot of programs right now, is that what we're actually doing is that instead of giving everybody a baseline instrument and giving everybody sort of the deep dive into your profile, we actually start by creating interest in the concept of structural dynamics by doing a physical exercise like laying out the room, getting 4 plots in the room where people can stand, and then actually after even 10 minutes of sort of showing what move, follow, oppose, and bystand means, what it is, then ask people to just place themselves in the room and start interacting with each other from those positions, just to get people onto the concept of you have to have them all to have a good conversation. And if you miss a certain spot in your group dynamic, there's probably more room for failure or a less well-constructed adult-to-adult conversation going on. And that's really interesting to get people on board on the concept of psychological, of not structural dynamics, and then interested in sort of, but is there more? So it really triggers their sort of, but this can't be all what's there to learn, and that's been really, really interesting to see happen over the past time.
And if I can build on that, by making it an embodied, kinesthetic experience, people get it in one, and they really get the sense, hey, now that I've seen it, I can no longer unsee it. I need to take this into my team. And that's power that several hundred times in the last at least 12 years or so. And it's never failed to have that effect. I want to stop talking and hear if you have any questions or thoughts or experiences that you want to share now.
Hi, this is Etta. I've had the same experience, and I've actually used the same words. It's funny that you can't unsee it once you start seeing it. And as Sandra knows, Diana, Jane, and I, and Peter have all learned with Catherine and Jillian. And so that's how I always introduce things, through the embodied action stances. Something else I've used is I created these little cards. I think it was the communication domains. And I worked with a team that was struggling with communication, and I gave them a stacked deck of cards. So someone who had a very low oppose, I gave her mostly opposes, etc. So I gave people cards that were the opposite of what they were most comfortable with. Yeah. And so first they looked and they kind of gave me a dirty look. But then then I gave them, they had to come up with their own topic that they wanted to discuss, a real work topic. And they were laughing because having these little cards that are like the size of playing cards, it was like anteing up before you, in a game of poker. And as you know, when you're laughing, there's much more openness to learning. And so that was a different form of kinesthetic experiences.
Oh, that's actually a great idea.
Yeah, because I'm now that you're talking, I can all of a sudden see a deck of cards where you get people to do improv on the basis of the cards that they're dealt.
Right, and because in this team there was one person who had a strong oppose, and I gave him none. And he held the oppose for the whole team, and so that was a whole story, their story, and it twisted his head, and it was great.
Thank you.
That's really cool. That's a great idea. Anybody else who has something they want to share, or an idea, or want to riff off that, or has questions?
Well, I recently, this is Jane, I did a team training with a new starter. Sandra, you were talking about kicking off the meeting, and so I decided to kick this one off differently as well, and I'm going to repeat it with a different department in a couple weeks. And what I did was we wanted to look at the team dynamic, and so instead of just using the team profile and all this, I had them do a little creative challenge first, where I had different art materials that were pretty simple, like some paint, some magazines to cut out from, pair of scissors, glue stick, but pretty limited. So they had to stretch a little. They had to use at least one thing from each of the media. There was yarn, there was paint, there was, paper. And the challenge was, on a big piece of poster board, in 10 minutes, they had to create something that described their team philosophy. And of course, the point wasn't about the team philosophy at all. It was, how do they work together under a little bit of pressure? Yeah. When they have a task, I told them that I would give them 10 minutes, and then they would have 1 minute to present it to me. So then we use that as the springboard for talking about the team dynamic, who showed up, how, all this. So again, revealing it first and then going into the unpacking.
Jane, can I ask a question?
Uh-huh.
Were you also codifying their sort of behavior, like who was following or who was opposing, or were you just
Afterward, yes, afterwards. But I wanted them to do like this in situ, just playing out their defaults first.
Yeah.
That said, I had done a one-on-one debrief with each of them ahead of time in the 3 weeks or so beforehand. But then I hadn't told them that they would be doing this little challenge, and that I hadn't told them that we were going to talk about it in terms of this afterwards. So it worked really well. Actually, it gave us a lot of data to work with.
Yeah, if you, one of the things that I've done in the past when I still had my own training location at my disposition, and I had a semi-professional kitchen. So if you have access to a cooking studio or have a big kitchen somewhere that you have access to, you buy the ingredients for a 3-course meal for a group somewhere during a program that you're running. You give them 3 recipes and you tell them, here are 3 recipes, here are the ingredients. Now figure out how you produce a working 3-course dinner with each other. And you install yourself on a bar stool and pour yourself a glass of water or wine, and you observe and you make notes about their behavior. And it's unbelievable, because producing 3 courses for anywhere between 6 to 15 people requires timing and actually raises stakes. And those have been incredibly enjoyable and glorious evenings, with a lot of integrated learning around how people show up and what behaviors and what communication profiles they have, because I would just sit there and I'd code what they were doing.
Yes, exactly. So that's what I did. And right, same concept. And I thought it worked really well.
Cool.
Thank you, Jane.
Thanks, Jane.
Thank you. I love your cooking idea.
Any other perspectives or questions? Okay. Well, I know that we scheduled an hour and a half, but I think if we're not getting any further response, we're at the end of the time that we need to spend together. Feel free to reach out individually if you have any thoughts or questions. What I commit to doing is, or what we commit to doing is giving a good update with more content on the conference. What we'll also do is we'll create a Google Drive that we will invite you and a couple of other people to, and we'll just call that the beta group.
Yeah.
And I will put up a document that I described when I was interacting with Jane around team dynamics and around dialogue, and how it ties in also with the action layer. And then we will get to work on saying something coherent in a nice looking document about team effectiveness and the benefits of using structural dynamics. And we'll do the same for coaching. Expect that somewhere in the next 6 weeks. What I'll also do is I'll share a deck in the same drive that describes how I have sold a high performance team program into organizations on the basis of structural dynamics. And then if you want to talk more about it, just let me know, and then we'll assemble another one to do a deep dive on the actual program design and how you could position it if you wanted to. Good. Then thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you all.
And again, I'll reiterate, just reach out to Sandra or me, or do it via inquiries on the website or to the website or the email address.
Yeah.
And we're there for you. And I look forward to talking with you individually or together somewhere in the next 6 weeks. Have a great day.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Everyone, thanks.
Bye-bye. Thank
Bye,
you.
Marcelo. Talk soon.
Talk soon. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.